Along the same lines, in terms of security, the US has decided to extend some closures at embassies and consulates over security concerns. If you looked at the map of where these embassy and consulate closures are, it's a pretty big area. It's Africa, it's Middle East, it's even Madagascar off the coast of Africa. 21 embassies and consulates were closed yesterday, and then some will continue to be closed. The State Department says this was out of an abundance of caution and not a reaction to a new threat other than the one we heard of, Al-Qaeda planning a major terrorist attack. If the threats aren't known, I have a lot of questions about this, and I'm going to try to talk through it, and hopefully I know that you will tell me if I'm going off course in some way in my thought process here. If the threats aren't known to be related to a specific embassy, in other words, specific embassies U.S. embassies in North Africa, period. U.S. embassies specifically and consulates in a particular country, Libya, for example. If the threats aren't known to be specific to one embassy or country, but this reaction to close 21 embassies and consulates is because of that general turmoil in the area, the general threat of an Al-Qaeda attack being planned as we heard about, then does it really make sense to close them, or wouldn't the terrorists just wait for them to reopen? In other words, if Al-Qaeda terrorists really were focused on, we want to attack an embassy in Libya, in northern Africa. Okay, well, the U.S. has decided to close those for 3 days. Your plans aren't necessarily thrown completely for a loop if you just have to wait a few days in order to make that attack happen. At the same time, the fact that the embassies were closed over such a large distance, I mean, think about it. We've got in Libya, we have embassies closed, and in Madagascar, we have embassies closed. That's a really long distance. Doesn't that suggest that authorities don't really know exactly where these potential threats exist? If they did, they wouldn't have to close such a large area. Now, the counter argument to that is, well, closing such a large area is a cover so that the terrorists don't realize American authorities know exactly where the attack will be. Therefore, they close the large area to throw them off, but really the authorities know exactly where the threat is. Something about this doesn't make sense to me. And again, I'm brought back to the question of, if we have to shut down 20 embassies and consulates as far apart as Libya and Madagascar are, does that say that we should be confident in the authorities and in the agencies that are monitoring this type of thing? Or do we have to believe one of two things, neither of which brings me great pleasure to talk about? Option one, that there is actually lack of competence among these authorities, or number two, that these threats and announcements about potential attacks are actually being used to manipulate American feelings about surveillance, about foreign policy, about involvement overseas. And this is really one of those issues that goes beyond Democrats and Republicans. It really does. This is, we can point to individual parties that are bigger offenders when it comes to particular aspects of the security state. But by and large, this is the political system, the two-party system in the United States. We've got to be aware of it. We've got to be questioning these things. And that does not mean that there is no desire to hurt Americans. That exists. Factually speaking, that exists. The question, and it has been since 9/11 was used to go into Iraq, how is the threat of terror used as a pretext or to get compliance from individuals to carry out certain foreign policy goals?